Buenas noches to everybody. I thought I would actually open by saying good afternoon, but as you realize, it's getting quite late here. In any event, I want to thank the Tarbut School for the privilege of coming here and addressing you tonight. I think it's extremely important that at an event like this, you have at least one speaker from Israel, in a Jewish school, of course. But before I begin, I want to read you a post that I got on my Facebook page today after I wrote that I was going to speak to you tonight at an event organized by the Tarbut High School of Mexico City. A woman named Ricky Sheffy Barrett, I don't know who she is, apparently she's a friend on Facebook, wrote the following. So glad to see that the event is sponsored by the Tarbut High School in Mexico City. To me, it's like living memory for the Jews of Pittsburgh and my parents who studied at Tarbut High School in Pittsburgh, Belarus from 1929 to 1933. So this is also part of the memory. In any event, what I'd like to do tonight is to begin by telling you some news that might surprise you. Usually when I tell people what I do, the initial reaction of many of them is, really? Are you still hunting Nazis? Are there still Nazis out there? So, the fact of the matter is that, believe it or not, there are Nazis out there. And in fact, the most dramatic development in our work has been the extension of life expectancy. In other words, if 73 years after the end of the Shoah had been in 1920, I think you could probably say that there are no Nazis left. But today, with the advances of modern medicine, and the fact that I even say that I think that people without a conscience live longer, there are still many Nazi war criminals out there, alive and well. And the good news is that in the last several months, I had the great privilege of finding and exposing 3 men who served in Einsatzgruppe C, who were the ones who carried out the murders at Babi Yar outside Kiev. On September 29th and 30th, 1941, it was actually Yom Kippur, 33,771 Jews were murdered by the Einsatzgruppe C, Ukrainian security police. The biggest, worst murder in the history of the Holocaust. And I was able to find 3 of the people who served in that unit alive and well and living in Germany. So the fight goes on. But there are those who think that perhaps this is already something that's not really important anymore and of little value. So what I'd like to talk to you about tonight is to explain to you why, even at this point in time, it's extremely important to do whatever we can to bring to justice the perpetrators of the Holocaust. First point is that the passage of time in no way diminishes the guilt of the killers. The fact that these murders were committed long ago doesn't change the fact that the murders took place. Had these people been brought to justice long ago, many years ago, perhaps there would be less skepticism. But the fact of the matter is that the crime remains the crime, and until these people are brought to justice, justice is not served. Second point is that old age should not protect people who committed such heinous crimes. Just because someone reaches the age of 90, it doesn't turn a murderer, or even a mass murderer, into a righteous Gentile. Point number 3, and this is a point that was always emphasized by my mentor, a great hero of the Jewish people, Simon Wiesenthal, and that is the obligation that our generation owes to the victims of the Nazis, to the people who turned innocent men, women, and children into victims simply because they were classified as enemies of the Reich. Now, there was no hope of ever achieving perfect justice. And it's true that we're only bringing a token, a small percentage of the people who committed the crimes of the Holocaust and justice. But every one of these trials and every one of these convictions and punishments is a reminder that these people must pay for the crimes, and we owe it to the victims. What did they write on the walls in the ghetto in Kovna? Yidden nekama. Jews, take revenge. Don't allow our deaths to go unpunished. This, in a sense, is a legacy. Along with another legacy, by the way, which was the legacy of the famous historian Shimon Dubnov, who, as he was being taken out of his apartment in Riga to be murdered, wrote, Yidden schreiben. Jews write. Jews report the facts of the murders. So these two, in a sense, commands are what motivate us to continue to do our work of writing down the history, the accurate history, as I'll get to in a minute, and in a sense to take a just revenge. The fourth point is that it sends a very powerful message that we are still looking for these people and trying to hold them accountable. And this is something that I think has a unique importance, because you know, at the end of World War II, when the camps were liberated, a very wonderful phrase was coined. That phrase was never again. But the sad truth is that if we look at the history of the world, we look at the chronicle of even of the 21st century, we see that unfortunately that has not been the case. It's true that there has never been another Shoah, another Holocaust, the scope of the Holocaust, the nature of the Holocaust, but there have been terrible tragedies that have taken place. I'm sure that the people who coined that phrase really meant it. They went into the camps, they liberated the concentration camps in Germany and in Poland, and they came away with a desire to do whatever had to be done to make sure it wouldn't happen again. But is that what happened? It's not what happened. Biafra, Cambodia, Rwanda, Darfur, etc. They're not the Shoah, but they're plenty terrible. And part of the reason that these things took place, at least in my humble opinion, is because so little was done to achieve justice. In other words, it has to be clear that any person who commits crimes of this sort will most likely pay for it. Has that been the case? Unfortunately not. So in other words, if someone is sitting in his living room today and looking at some horrible atrocity being carried out by someone who he might be close to ideologically, the first question that will go through his or her mind will be, well, you know, I'd really like to join these people and commit such crimes, but will I pay for it? Or won't I pay for it? It has to be clear you'll pay for it, and you'll pay for it dearly. Another point is the fact of the importance that these trials play in the fight against Holocaust denial and Holocaust distortion. Now, I'm sure you all know what denial is. Denial is when people say the Shoah either didn't happen or its scope was greatly exaggerated, etc. But the good news is that the fight against Holocaust denial has been more or less won in the Western world. That doesn't mean that there will never be a person who will deny that the Shoah took place. But today, there's no mainstream normative political or social organization that spreads Holocaust denial. The defeat of David Irving in Old Bailey, the court in London, in the trial of Deborah Lipstadt was a tremendous victory, because David Irving was the most dangerous Holocaust denier there ever was. A person who started out as a legitimate historian, a person full of charisma, incredible talent, and he was basically torn to pieces by people like Richard Evans, the professor from Cambridge, who's one of the world's greatest experts on the Shoah. Of course, the situation in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, is very different. There you have a lot of Holocaust denial, and in some places it's even financed and sponsored by the governments. In other words, many of you probably recall the Iranian president Ahmadinejad. So if he goes on national television and tells the Iranian people that the Shoah didn't happen, I'm sure there are enough simple people who might even believe such an idiotic thing, even though the Holocaust is the most documented tragedy in human history. And that's exactly why we're able to win the fight in the Western world. Millions and millions of documents, not only written documents, photographs, films, and the enormous work in recording the testimonies of the survivors, tens of thousands of which we have as we prepare for the unfortunate day when the survivors will no longer be with us. Now, there's two other points that I think are very, very important in this matter. I don't know how many of you remember the trial of Ivan Demjanjuk. He was a guard at Sobibor death camp, and he was put on trial first in the United States. They thought he was in Treblinka. They thought he was the Ivan the Terrible of Treblinka. Turns out he was not the Ivan the Terrible, just another terrible Ivan. But in any event, he was ultimately tried for Sobibor. He was tried in Germany, and many people said, one second, this guy was not the commander of Sobibor. He wasn't even an officer. So why bother? What do you want from him? But the fact of the matter was that since international law was created in the wake of the Holocaust, the defense of superior orders was categorically rejected. That's not a sufficient defense. The fact that someone got an order from a person of a higher rank, if that order is clearly illegal, because it leads to the mass murder of innocent civilians, then that order cannot be obeyed. And if you obey that order, you have a share of responsibility. So Demjanjuk is not Heinrich Himmler, or Reinhard Heydrich, or even the Commandant of Sobibor, or Gustav von Wagner, the Deputy Commandant of Sobibor. But he does have a share of responsibility, because without these Demjanjuks, the Holocaust would never have reached the scope that it ultimately reached. So every one of these people, at every single level, has to share that responsibility, and it's our job to hold them accountable. Now, I want to conclude with one other interesting aspect. I'm often invited to Yad Vashem, the Israeli National Memorial and Research Center, and asked to address groups of teachers who come from all over the world to learn how to teach the Shoah, to learn about the Shoah. Very important work being done by Yad Vashem. And I'm often asked the following question. Dr. Zuroff, so many years have passed since the end of the Shoah. The people who committed the crimes are probably sorry. So I want to strengthen that question. Think about how much information is available about the Holocaust in the last 15, 20 years. How many books, plays, movies, not to mention the information on the internet. These people who were involved in these crimes in those days could read this information. It's available to them. They can read about the Holocaust. They can say to themselves, you know what? What we did back then, in those days, and of course all the people who we're bringing to justice now were very young in those days. When we were so young, that's the Holocaust. And you know what? We made a mistake. We were young, we were stupid, we were brainwashed, we thought the Jew was the enemy, we thought we were doing the patriotic thing. Now let me tell you a story, interesting story from the Shoah. One of the first murders of Jews in Lithuania took place in a place called the Atukis Garage in Kovna. More than 50 Jewish men were taken to this garage in the center of town and were murdered in two different ways. Some of them were beaten to death by crowbars, and the others had fire hoses shoved down their mouths and the water turned on to explode their stomachs. And these murders were watched by an enormous crowd, men, women, and children. And as each one of these people was being murdered, the crowd applauded. And at the end, when all of them were murdered, they were lying dead on the ground in the Atukis garage. Someone took out, according to one version, someone took out an accordion, started playing the Lithuanian national anthem, and all the crowd joined in. And the question I ask the teachers when I tell them the story, what is the connection? And the answer is super patriotism, extremism, nationalism, extremism. In any event, the sad news that I'm going to tell you is that in my experience, I've dealt with numerous Nazi war criminals from all over, and from many, many different walks of life, different levels of education and intelligence. I have not encountered a single case of a Nazi war criminal who ever expressed, that I dealt with, okay, that ever expressed any regret or remorse. If anything, just the opposite. So I want to conclude with one story. A story that I'm particularly proud of, about the most important Nazi war criminal I helped to bring to justice. A man named Dinko Shakic, who was the commandant of a camp called Jasenovac. So I don't know if any of you are from former Yugoslavia. It was the camp in Croatia, built by Croatians, manned by Croatians, in which at least approximately 100,000 Serbs, Jews, Roma, and anti-fascist Croatians were murdered. And they were murdered in the worst way possible, with the most horrible, in other words, they were murdered individually, there were no gas chambers, bullets, daggers, swords, grenades, you name it. In any event, like many Nazi war criminals, he ran away to Argentina. And we discovered him with the help of Jorge Camarasa, who's a well-known Argentinian journalist. We sent Jorge Camarasa to Belgrade to meet with survivors of Jasenovac before he went to confront Shakic. Knocks on Shakic's door. Shakic comes to the door. Are you Dinko Shakic? Yes. You are the commandant of Jasenovac. What does Shakic say? Yes. So first of all, let's stop there for a minute. Usually when Nazis are about to be exposed, there's two responses. One is, it's not me. Okay, mistaken identity. The other one is, it's me, I didn't do it. What does Dinko Shakic say? It's me and I did it. Camarasa says, I have a few questions to ask. Can we come in? Can we sit down and ask you some questions? Sure, why not? Camarasa says to him, listen, you were the commandant of one of the worst camps in Europe. What do you have to say for yourself? Shakic says, Jasenovac was a penal colony, and everyone who was there, every country has penal colonies, like jails, and every person who was there deserved to be there. So Camarasa says, listen, you can't fool me. I met with the survivors. I met with Yosef Erlich at Belgrade. He told me about the tortures, the executions. So Shakic says, listen, buddy, you don't get it. The problem with Jasenovac was they didn't let us finish the job. Now, when did he say this? He said this more than 50 years after Jasenovac was closed down. As far as Dinko Shakic was concerned, absolutely nothing had changed. And this is true of so many of them. So these are the last people on earth who deserve any sympathy. We're not bringing them to justice because they didn't help an old lady cross the street. When you look at them, don't see frail old men and women who deserve your sympathy. Think of them in their youth, when they devoted all their energy and strength to killing innocent men, women, and children. So in that context, I think that the most suitable way to conclude this TED Talk, and this one's going to conclude almost on time, okay, is the story about Simon Wiesenthal, who was often asked why he didn't return to his profession as an architect after the Shoah, and he was a very good architect. So Mr. Wiesenthal said the following: he's not a very religious Jew, but he believes in the world to come. And when the survivors of the Shoah will pass away, they'll meet the victims. And the first question that the victims will ask the survivors will be, no, you were the lucky ones. You survived. What did you do with your lives? So Simon says, so one will say, I was a lawyer. Another will say, I was a teacher. I did this, I did that. I, Simon Wiesenthal, will say, I didn't forget you. Thank you very much.